Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of City Skylines and our city Lakewood. In today's episode, we're going to be creating our permanent industrial area with some unique factories and zoned industry to make sure that our city is capable of producing enough goods to support our citizens. We are going to get our unique factories in place to start off with, and they are going to be going into the blocks here in front of our ore and oil industries, alongside the power plant and the waste processing complexes that we already have in place. The waste processing complexes will be adjusted slightly, but they're going to stay in the same block that they're already in. And we do have quite a bit of room. There are lots of unique factories that we can pick from, and most of them are fairly sizable, but we have a ton of room. We'll be able to fit in all of the unique factories, plus a little bit more, plus even having a little bit of room around to spare. So let's start getting them in place. We're going to do our best to keep similar unique factories together in the same block. So for example, having the industrial steel plant beside the bakery, it doesn't really make too much sense, but having the industrial steel plant beside the car factory does make a little bit more sense. We can also think about placement of these unique factories. So again, the industrial steel plant across the street from the ore industry makes a little bit more sense than, say, having it all the way over here, about as far away as it can get. Also, the car factory, not exactly across the street, but within short driving distance of the oil industry, does make a little bit more sense than, say, somewhere far over here where supply vehicles will have to drive quite a distance to be able to supply them. Now, obviously, it's not going to be perfect. Our farming and forestry industries are way over here. But again, like I said, we're going to do the best that we can with what we have. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to get the job done. So starting with the industrial steel plant, we're going to just place it right here. And I'd like to have a perimeter road just to go around the outside edge. So we'll put that in as well. Just remove any of these excess roads. And then the car factory is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, unique factory that we can have. And instead of placing it in the same orientation as the industrial steel plant, I'm just going to put it perpendicular to what we have already right now. Place it in right there like that. And then again, I'm going to put a perimeter road around the outside. And I'm going to extend it a little bit further here, just so that I have an appropriate distance to be able to put this next road in like this. And then finish it off over here. We're also going to put in a couple more entry roads. I don't want to have just this one single road, the only one into the area. So we're going to connect it up to this 4-lane collector as well. Maybe we'll put a little bit of a curve on it. So I think that looks good. And then let's put one more road. Let's do one up at the top here. Just connect to the road that's going towards our nuclear power plant. Why not? I think that's good. And the reason for that being, it's going to kind of split up the traffic a little bit. So we'll have vehicles coming in from our ore industry, maybe through this road here. And then from this road here, we'll be having vehicles coming from our oil industry. I mean, maybe it might be split up between the two, but who knows? And then over here, probably vehicles coming in from the farming and forestry industries. Eventually, we're going to get a cargo train station at the end here, so we might get more vehicles coming in through here. But again, it's going to probably split up at least a little bit. Just going to connect our utilities. Make sure we have water going through here. And then I think they're already close enough to the power plant, to these lines right here, that they are getting electricity as it is. And since it's an industry, we might as well upgrade these roads to the industry roads. Don't anticipate there to be too much traffic, so I'm not going to bother trying to do a one-way road kind of going through the area, similar to what I have done for, which one of these has it? I think they both do. So the ore industry, it does have this one-way road that kind of controls the flow of traffic. I don't expect there to be quite as much traffic going through here. So I'm going to leave it as is for now and kind of see how it goes. Okay, next on the list, we are going to go right over here. And I think it's time for us to move our waste processing complexes, kind of tidy this up a little bit. This was always temporary. I never really liked where it was here along the 4-lane collector road, especially the pollution. I hate pollution. I want to try and get it kind of more centralized in this block here and keep it away from the roads and kind of confined to an area so that it's not where people are driving. One of the cool things about these waste processing complexes is you can pretty much move them anytime you want. So unlike the landfills and the recycle depots, you don't have to empty them out to be able to move them. You only have to worry about space and money to be able to do so. And as for money, it's costing us $20,000 to be able to move them. So at the end of the day, really not too much. And realistically, by the time you unlock these buildings, you're going to have a ton of money anyway. So you can pretty much move them anytime you need to. I've also noticed that while I was moving them, it does open the garbage info view. So we'll just take a quick peek at that again. It looks like we're only producing 400,000 units of garbage, roughly 400,000, but we're processing capacity is over 1 million. So we have way more processing capacity than we need. So assuming these buildings contribute equally, and it's just these buildings that's contributing to that, each one is roughly 200,000 units of garbage processing capacity. So I'm thinking we can get rid of 2 of these buildings. Actually, let's just bulldoze them completely. So this should give us roughly 600,000 units of processing capacity. And honestly, the city is not going to be getting too much bigger than as it is right now. So I think we should have more than enough capacity to be able to process our garbage with these 3. And obviously we can add more if needed, but for now we'll stick to those 3. And if you haven't noticed, I'm also going to be pausing the game while we do this part. I don't see the point in moving them over here, producing a little bit of pollution, to just move them back to almost exactly where they were before. Going to try and avoid spreading out the pollution as much as possible. So we'll pause the game, we'll get them set up, and then we'll move them back into place and turn everything back on. We're not going to be doing anything too crazy here. Our main goal is going to be just bringing the waste processing complexes off of the 4-lane collector roads, especially the one down here at the bottom. The reason for that being is we're going to be putting in some more unique factories in the area right here. There will be some other ones on the sides, but you can see that the pollution doesn't quite extend that far right now. So I think by centralizing everything in the block that we have right here, we should be able to somewhat confine the pollution to the block itself and not have it extend too far across the 4-lane collector roads. So to do that, we will just use our small industry road and just draw a road off the edge into the middle. And we're going to go a block and a half in. I'm just going to draw a rough T and then bring it all the way across just to line it up so I can see where it is on the other side. We'll have a waste processing complex on each of these T's, and I'll line up the entrance with the intersection that's right there. Third waste processing complex, we'll put it in the middle. I thought about maybe putting it here. It would help certainly for keeping it confined within the block on the sides and the bottom, but you can see at the top there, it will potentially start going into the residential neighborhood that we have. So I'm going to just centralize it a little bit more in the middle. And we'll draw a third road coming into the area like this so that it's lined up with the entryway to this waste processing complex. And what we can also do is we can remove these 2 little road segments that I have on either side. The reason for these originally was a little bit of a turnaround for any vehicles coming down the road. This used to be a long straightaway of a 4-lane collector road with no real option for the trucks to turn around. But now that we're starting to fill in the area, I think they'll have plenty of different ways that they can go if they need to. We'll move one of these waste transfer facilities back into the area. I don't think we need both of them, so we'll delete one. And then before we turn everything back on, we'll just make sure that our utilities are hooked back up. It looks like we have a gap in our power lines right here, so we'll just make sure that everything is how it's supposed to be. Okay, I think that should be it. Everything should be set for us to turn it back on. All right, now that we've got the pollution sorted out, we can put in our next set of factories, which is going to be the toy, sneaker, and clothing factories. We'll put the entryway to the next factory section kind of in between the intersection of the two 4-lane collectors and the entryway to our waste processing complex. So it's $1,800 in between those two, so 900. Looks like we can only get to 920, which is just fine, and 1,800 on the other side as well. So we'll go with 920 as well. Just make sure we're going from the 4-lane intersection here. 920, that's going to be close enough. I paused the game. I'm putting in that road segment. It looked like we were going to be deleting our power line, so just get the game paused so we don't screw up our city too much. And we'll do another little road segment. The toy factory, it's not particularly big, so it'll fit right in there quite well. So we'll just put that in. And then the sneaker and the clothing factories, I would consider those ones kind of medium-sized, and they are quite long, so they're rectangular shaped. I'll get those both in here. Clothing factory, so we'll put it, let's say, right here. I'd like to try and put those power lines back in where they were, so I'm hoping that corner of the factory is not too close. There we go, that'll work. And then the last one, the sneaker factory, again, kind of medium-sized, rectangular shaped. I kind of like it like this. Originally, I was planning to have it kind of perpendicular to the other factory, but I like the way it looks like this, so that's what we'll do. And then we'll move this one over one more block so that they're lined up beside each other. And then we'll leave it like that. I think that looks good. Get our power lines back before we resume the game. And you know, the next section that we're going to be putting in for factories is going to be right here. These power lines might not be in the way, but I'd like to move them anyway right now while we're here. So we'll put them just on the other side of the 4-lane collector road. Do something like this. Would be good. It looks like everything is now connected. Utilities, I guess we still have water for these guys we need to put in. Okay, that should have sufficient coverage for everything, and we'll resume the game. Looks like everything's good. It looks like they're only complaining for raw materials, and that is just shipments that they need to be able to make their final products. So all good here. We'll just let them get their deliveries. And we will also, while we're thinking about it right here, just adjust our junctions. We don't want too many light intersections along the 4-lane collector road here. We'll change them all to stop signs. That section should be good. Before we get into the next set of factories, I was just sitting here waiting to start recording, and I noticed that having the entryways to our waste processing complexes right at these intersections maybe wasn't quite a good idea. So I'm going to just resume the game and we'll just take a look at the trucks. It's causing a little bit of an issue with trucks coming in and out of the factory and then trying to go through the intersection here. So instead what we're going to do, we're just going to reposition these factories and have the entryways along the straight sections of road. So we'll put these two on the ends to the bottom, and then this one here in the middle up towards the top like that. And that should hopefully help with traffic a little bit. The next block is going to have our electronics, household plastics, and furniture factories, and it's pretty much going to have exactly the same layout as the other two. We're going to have some 2-lane local roads coming off of our 4-lane collector roads, and then the factories along the 2-lane local roads. One of the reasons for that being is that I want to try and keep the flow of traffic along the collector lanes relatively smooth. I don't want to have trucks having to stop to deliver goods to their factories along the 4-lane collector roads and slowing everything down. So having these local roads here is going to help to be able to do that. So the factories we're going to be putting in, as I said, electronics. It's probably one of the larger ones. Let's see, it's not quite as big as the car factory, probably half the size of the car factory, but still quite a bit bigger than the other ones that we've put in so far. So we'll put that in right at the top, and then the furniture and household plastics. I think those ones are, again, kind of some smaller sized ones. So furniture, where's that? Household plastics. So we'll slide that in right here. And then furniture, where's that one? Furniture. So we'll have it like this. I don't want to put it too close to the intersection, so we'll just have it right over here like that. Looks like they're already complaining about utilities, so let's get them hooked up. And junctions. We already talked about having traffic flowing nicely along the 4-lane collectors. So by default, it likes to put in the lights for an intersection. So we'll just switch those to stop signs coming onto the 4-lane collector. And then that should be good. So that section should be set for now. The last area here is going to have all of our remaining factories except for one. The only factory that it's not going to have is the seafood factory. The seafood factory is going to be going into the fishing industry once we're done here. Actually, I believe it came out with the Sunset Harbour DLC, or maybe even afterwards. When the Industries DLC originally came out, the fishing industry wasn't a thing. That came out with the Sunset Harbour DLC. So if you don't have Sunset Harbour, you may not have access to the seafood factory, but it is there if you do have it. And now the remaining factories that we have about 5 factories. So it's going to be almost double the number of factories that we have in some of the other areas. And we're still going to be, although there's going to be 5 in this area, we're still going to be sticking to a little bit of a theme. It's kind of going to be split into 2 sub areas within the big area here. So the first sub theme that we're going to start with is going to be food factories. So we'll start with the food factory. So there is one that is actually called the food factory. It's another long rectangular shaped one. It's a little bit different than the other ones that we've seen so far in that the entryway, you can see where that little arrow is. It's along the long axis of the building rather than the short axis at the end. So that's just a little bit different than the others. If I put it in here, I want to just make sure that the entryway isn't exactly lined up with that intersection. So what we'll do is we will maybe move it up a little bit, just so that, just like the waste processing complex, we don't run into the issue that we had before with the delivery trucks kind of getting all screwed up trying to deliver goods to the building as well as use the intersection itself. So we will just slide it up there and get it out of the way. We'll put in a perimeter road up at the top like this, and then we'll put in the lemonade factory beside this one. Now the lemonade factory is another big one. I'm not entirely sure why they made it as big as they did. I've truthfully never been to a lemonade factory though before, so maybe they are this big in real life, but it's quite a bit bigger than I imagined it would have been. And then we'll continue the perimeter road around the outside edge. And then lastly, for our food related factories, we have the bakery that still needs to go in. The bakery is another small factory, so we'll just put it on the corner just at the bottom over here. And we will continue to the next section for some more factories. The last two that we're going to be putting in are the soft paper factory and the printing press. A soft paper factory is another large factory. It's got a little notch though at the bottom, so you can see that's kind of like a fat L shape. And then at the bottom corner there's a notch out of it. It's actually a pretty decent spot to put in the printing press, right in that little spot there. It's not perfectly lined up, but it's pretty darn close. Having the two kind of close together, I think, makes sense. So you can see it fits in there. There's a little bit of a gap, but it's not too bad. And then we'll continue the perimeter road. We'll just put one around the outside edge of both of these, and then we'll put another little road just into there. No particular reason, just for aesthetics. Continue along the outside edge. Get rid of these little bits at the ends of some of these roads, and then we'll put in some more connections to our 4-lane collectors that are around the outside edge. So right now we only have the one coming over from the right hand side. We'll put in a few more down at the bottom and then off to the side as well. So let's put one in. I want to kind of maybe put a road connection partway in between these two other intersections that we already have. So we'll put something in, say, like this, and maybe connect to both of these areas. Like so. And then we'll connect up to the other side over here. Maybe we'll just come straight off of this one. And then lastly, I want to put in another connection to this road right here. This 4-lane collector goes straight to the cargo airport up at the corner. So having a good connection there, I think, would be useful. Maybe what we'll do is we'll go straight for a bit and then add a curve at the end. Here we go. That should give us lots of connections for all the 4-lane collectors to our 2-lane local roads to support the factories. And then just like all the others, we will double check our junctions just to make sure that we have smooth traffic going along the 4-lane collectors. One more up at the top over here. Double check our utilities. Water and electricity are going to need to be added. I think that should cover that. Electricity. Let's add a connection down over here. Okay, that should be it for that group up at the corner up over here. And then, like I said at the beginning of that last section, we have the seafood factory. And I think it makes sense for it to go into the area of our fishing industry. So we'll add it right here on this road. Or maybe, I wonder, what do these produce? Commercial goods, zone goods. So our seafood factory needs fish and plastics. So the fish are produced at the harbors themselves and not these other fish factories. So we'll add our seafood factory to the same area though, just to kind of keep the same theme. Maybe what we'll do is we'll just remove one of these other factories and put it into that same block. And that should be good. Okay, perfect. I think we're set for all of our factories now. Now that we've got the general layout in place, it's time for us to add some detail. I mentioned early on in the video about putting a cargo train terminal at the end right here. So we'll be putting that in. We're also going to be putting in a second cargo train terminal over here in between the 4-lane collector and the 2 tracks that we've already got. And a third one over here in between the highway and the factories that we put over here. So in total, there will be 3, nope, make that 4. There's already a cargo train terminal right here. So there will be 4 cargo train terminals, I guess, technically servicing our industrial area. Maybe a little bit excessive, but since it's such a huge area, I think having 3, 4 is not completely unreasonable. It'll help distribute the train traffic and truck traffic, and hopefully each section of the industrial area will go to its own cargo train terminal rather than having to send trucks too far away. I did my best to try and make a time lapse of putting in the new train tracks, but unfortunately after editing the footage and speeding it up, it tended to jump around a little bit too much and didn't look very good. So instead what we'll do is just a quick overview of the tracks in the area. I'm also going to turn on the road tool. It puts the bullseye around my cursor, so that should hopefully be a little bit easier for people to see as I'm explaining things. Starting at the junction here, this triangular set of tracks was already here when we started. It goes towards the bottom left, which is the cargo airport, the bottom right, which is the cargo train terminal of the oil industry, and then the top left that goes towards the regional train network above. The new track splits from that top left-hand track, goes across the highway and splits again and off to the top right-hand corner, which goes towards the new cargo train terminals that we added. The other adjustment in the area that I made was putting the 4-lane collector road underground here along this curve. It was pretty much impossible for me to be able to find an orientation for this curved elevated track to cross the curved 4-lane collector road below. I tried for I don't know how long. I couldn't find something that would work, so I took the easy way out and I put the road into a tunnel. That made more sense to me than putting the train into a tunnel. It's basically one less step. So going from ground level to tunnel back to ground level, rather than going from elevated track to ground to tunnel to ground to elevated track again on the other side. Just putting the road into a tunnel seemed easier, so that's what I did. The top new track goes towards the right here and then towards the paper and food factories. The bottom track splits all of the industries that we have in the factories, goes all the way along here towards the cargo train terminal near the water at the end. And the last cargo train terminal that we added over here, it already had 2 lines going towards the regional train network to the left, and then 2 lines going towards the fishing, farming, and forestry industries to the right. So all I did was split off of that bottom line and have 1 line coming from the left regional lines and 1 line coming from the right fishing, farming, and forestry industries. So this one was relatively easy compared to the other ones that I've already shown you. After adding our new train tracks, I also made some adjustments to the power lines again. The lines right here are back to being above the 4-lane collector road, and I also added a second line going towards the city. You really only need 1, but I think 2 looks kind of cool. And I extended the lines over here going from our nuclear power plant towards the paper and food factories. So we pretty much have 2 sets of lines going towards all of our major industries and factories in the area. And I think that kind of fills it out quite well. I think that looks kind of cool. Reason being, I would imagine that these factories and industries require a little bit more power than, say, your regular household would. So having these extra lines in here is just more for aesthetics than anything else. We're also going to have to address the generic zoned industry for the city. So if we take a look at the city statistics, we can see that we have roughly 1,300 units of zoned industry. Most of that is going to be coming from over here in our temporary industrial area. I think this is, I don't know, the 3rd or the 4th time that we've moved the generic industry around to a different area. So we're going to be moving it to now a permanent spot. We also have some generic industry from our cargo harbor, but that's going to stay where it is. It's just this area right here that's going to be dezoned and moved over towards the unique factories. So just like the unique factories, they're going to be spread out throughout the area. So instead of having 1 block of generic zoned industry like we have over here, it's going to be spread amongst these blocks of unique factories. So each area is going to have a couple zoned industries amongst them. Our unique factories are in place and the generic industry has leveled up. We're at roughly 1800 units of zoned industry, which is more than what we had before. All of the commercial buildings and emergency shelters in the city are well supplied with goods, and the traffic within the industrial area, the city, and the train network is running smoothly. So I think overall the industrial area has been a success. I finished everything off with some trees to fill in the gaps, and I'm pretty happy with how everything turned out. We've still got a few things to do in Lakewood, and slowly but surely we are finishing things up. Thank you all very much for watching, and if you enjoyed the episode, don't hesitate to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see everyone in the next episode.